Oh, damn. You know, wait, hang on.
I can't hang on. We've already went live.
You jinxed it.
Yeah.
11:03.
There goes Gordon.
Oh, I should.
Gordon, don't do that on live TV.
We can see you, Gordon.
Yeah.
No, you can't. All right, yeah. Nobody wants to see my belly.
Yeah.
I forgot to wear a shirt, but it's like...
You're already wearing a shirt,
It's too
Gordon.
small. This would actually fit
I think that might be a woman's size.
Wait, what?
It might actually be a woman's size. He may have sent it.
Because look how large that collar is.
Wait, why would that? No.
That large collar does not seem right.
That doesn't work, huh? Yeah, that's not gonna work.
Should I put over my shirt?
I didn't get a chance.
Well, now he's all stretched it out. E. Lopez 580 is here. Hello.
Yeah, so anyway.
Oh, you think this is a women's large?
I don't know. I
YouTube's
think so.
connected.
There's no way that's a
Twitch
dude
is
large.
connected.
Because,
No, it's not a dude's large.
Oh, that's
And
why. Look
producer
at that.
is
Steve is so
connected.
thoughtful. What a good host.
Yeah.
You know, I bet if you visited him, Steve would be a great
Facebook's
host.
on
This
too.
actually might be a women's large.
Yeah, that's
Not
what I was
anymore.
thinking.
It's
Because
probably
look,
like
it even has
women's
like the little
XL
like.
now that
You see
I
how
put
the
it on.
shaping?
Cesar from Lima.
All right, we'll just put it
Chris.
here.
Todd.
Thanks, Steve.
Says go Gamers Nexus. Extra gnome sized is what Alex says.
No, I think
Steve at
he's-
Gamers Nexus had a great video today where he tracked down DeBauer at the Case King
Yeah.
booth at Gamescom, and they tore apart an EVGA 2080 Ti. So
Oh, nice.
They're already getting to the insides of it.
Nice.
Wow, they're allowing people to
I don't know if they're.
access to the cards.
He did it. It was at the Case King labs. So
All right, you know we should go. There's so excited. I have so many questions for you, Brad.
Yeah, let's
So many.
address the audience.
Hey,
People are piling in.
internet. We're here in wonderful San Francisco, where Big Mac is $9. Brad is in Cologne, Germany, at Gamescom, where the big news is. Stand by for everything he can tell us about GTX 10 2080. And the best thing
It's
is,
what you know.
ain't no NDA. Ain't no NDA. You can ask Brad anything you want directly from Cologne.
Cologne.
Right?
This is a joke from yesterday. If you weren't tuned in.
Yeah. I
This,
pronounce it correctly. I pronounce it Cologne, I think, but
It
it's
is
like,
Cologne.
oh yeah, how do you pronounce Qatar? You tell me that.
Oh no, we're not doing this
Oh
again.
yeah, sure. Yeah. It's Qatar. I've been saying Qatar for a long time, and then suddenly he's like, "What, Qatar?" You're watching the news, they're talking about Qatar. It's like, what? There's no C. It's a Q. Even people from Qatar pronounce it Qatar, but they probably, who knows? But anyway,
yeah, we've got a first timer, Storm 91.
Oh, hello.
54. First, he managed to
All
catch
right.
a live stream from the UK.
oh, outstanding! Look at this.
I'm
We
glad
got
to have you here.
Germany and all different time zones. Okay, ready?
Nice.
Little
Yeah.
Storm.
Or you want to
All right.
keep doing some shout outs? We do some shout outs?
No, we're good. Let's do it.
Ready?
Yep.
I have
I'm ready.
no idea. In this episode of The Full Nerd, it's the big one, Elizabeth. Sanford and Son reference.
I didn't know where you're going with that, so I cut you off. It's the big one, Elizabeth. Yep. Yeah. I forgot to put with
Does
Elena.
anybody know what a Sanford and Son is? All right. Welcome to The Full Nerd. Full Nerd episode 64. I can't talk because I'm so excited. I'm your host, Gordon Ung, with co-host Brad Charkis, live from Cologne, Germany.
There he is.
buddy
Home
on
of
the wall.
Gamescom. And, of course, Elena Yee on the left seat.
Hi,
I guess that's
everybody.
the right seat to you. And Adam Patrick Murray controlling the vertical and horizontal.
Brad, how much sleep have you gotten today, if any?
About 4 hours.
Oh, good. Because you've been seeing all the cool stuff, right?
Yes, I have actually.
And you're here to tell us all about it.
Sure.
Sure, why not? Let's do it.
Like I said, I got 4 hours of sleep. So yeah.
All right. I think we should make this like any good keynote.
Yes.
Besides the fact that we are going to tell you everything we know about GeForce RTX 2080 Ti and 2080 and 2070, let's talk about Gamescom. So we stretch it out so you have to like wait 10 minutes to find out the stuff you want to hear about.
Not even 10 minutes. It was like, what, a solid
That's
2
all.
hours?
Most keynotes. So Gamescom, of course, is the big show in Germany, big game show.
So are we starting with that?
I don't know. I don't know.
Let's start with
No.
RTX. Come on.
Come on.
Don't
I mean,
play
What kind
with
of
them.
you gotta make people like they're gonna like, okay, we know they're gone. They'll tune out in 5 minutes.
Drop off. Rate.
That's why what happens is at
Come
the
on,
end
Jensen.
of every Star Trek episode, it's the last 5 minutes. Because like, whoa, if you give it away in like 35 minutes, people are going to tune
No,
out.
you got to have that build up. Star
Being
Trek
run
was
their
different, you
market
know.
research.
So, and we were talking earlier before the show started. Brad was saying, I'm amazed that Steve, I'm referencing that. That's the way I have Steve Schroeder from Gamers Nexus. He did a
Thank you,
teardown
Steve.
of a 2080 card. What's up with that? I don't see. I sort of expected everybody would be under some strict NDA. Nobody would be able to talk about anything, but you're able to talk about what you know so far.
I know I saw the exact same presentation that y'all saw. So I can talk about anything that you've seen.
Yeah, but you saw it live and in person.
And you've been
I
touching
did.
cards, right?
I have been. They wouldn't actually let us touch any last night, but I found one sitting at a table in HP's booth at Gamescom, so I touched it a couple different ways.
Oh boy. Oh.
This is a family show.
Oh, y'all are going somewhere I was not meaning.
Obviously, it's a dual cooler setup. Should we sum up for people who have been living under a rock?
Yeah, so
Finally, after what, a year of waiting?
probably
2 years.
more.
I guess, but
Two and a
don't you-
half. 2.5.
I don't know about that. That's why I sent out that chart earlier because look, check it out. We got let's break it down.
Or should I switch to it?
680. Yeah, I guess you can if
Yeah.
you want.
All right.
GTX 680, 2012, GTX 980, 2014, GTX 1080, 2016. And then NVIDIA had nothing to do, so they came out with the 1080 Ti and Titan XP in 2017. And then now it's actually right on schedule. I had no idea. It's actually right on schedule every 2 years, right?
No, it's been. I was reading somewhere that earlier this month, NVIDIA officially passed the transition from Fury X to Vega for the longest high-end graphics card delay ever.
Ooh.
Well, I guess they don't count TI for 650.
Well, the 1080 came out in May 2016, 2.5 years ago. So, I guess if you're talking about the stragglers, I mean, we just had the GDDR4 1030 come out last week.
That's a card nobody wished they had.
It's not even GDR. It's just DDR4.
So of course the big news with RTX 2080 is ray tracing, real-time ray tracing.
Yep, that's all they talked about for a good 2 hours.
Right. I gotta say, like, you got a lot of people who watch the keynote, and people have their OCD. They have no short attention span. That's the way all keynotes go. Frankly, if you go to any trade show, any big launch, you got to have the long build up. And I think what I do appreciate from the NVIDIA keynotes is that Jensen knows his stuff, right?
Yeah.
There's very few CEOs that are going to get up there and that can talk to the detail that he does about all the technology. Now, a lot of people don't want the details. They just want to know how much and how fast. So that's a problem that is a little different.
Yeah, we got people in the chat say one person specifically said they fell asleep.
Yeah, and
during
that's
the live stream.
And
So.
to be honest, that's a tough one, right? Because, I mean, at his level, I just want to be fair. At the level he's at, remember, Jensen's been making graphics cards for his entire lifetime. He has a problem, I think, talking down to our level. It's like a human talking to a dog. Like, it really is like, you do eventually, like, I don't understand it.
I think this case is a little bit unique, though, because it is such a fundamental shift, like from focusing on rasterized graphics to all of a sudden we're trying to introduce ray tracing, and it needs that setup because, like, I understand what it means because I'm researching it. This has been going on theoretically for a long time. It hasn't officially worked until now, but the average gamer has no idea what it actually means. So I think it deserved a bit of setup.
Oh, for
An hour
sure.
and a half worth of setup was a bit much.
Well, didn't he already give some of that setup at SIGGRAPH as well?
Yeah, but nobody who's
I know.
interested in how much
You know,
GeForce cards
just,
costs.
It's a different crowd.
On Twitch, Bastel is asking a very important question. Any performance comparisons with current games and last-gen cards? Did they show something backstage? Please, Brad, tell us that they did.
The only thing that we had available backstage were demos of, you could play Shadow of Tomb Raider, you could play Metro Exodus and Battlefield 5 with ray tracing. So, and
really?
it didn't
Look.
show any FPS counters and stuff. I didn't actually play it myself because they had pre-scheduled demo slots and mine was for
okay.
11:30 at night.
Oh,
But
okay.
I stood, but I stood behind people watching it and stuff, and it looked all right. It looked pretty good. You could tell it was still early. You could tell that they're working with early drivers and stuff.
Okay.
But it is really cool to see the reflections, like off the battlefield, the metal of the guns and stuff like that. But I would want to spend more time with it before I
Yeah,
change
because
it.
some of the early chatter I saw on Twitter seemed to indicate that the people playing the demos weren't impressed. Like one of my ex-colleagues from IGN was there, and he was saying that it seemed a little grainy.
Yeah, you could. Again, I was standing probably 3 feet back watching.
I know.
But it did seem like there was a little bit of noise, which has traditionally been the problem with ray trace graphics in there. It could have been a low resolution. Who knows? I mean, it still looked good. Don't get me wrong.
But it looked, to me, did it look playable? Is the thing. I mean, if you're actually getting what looked like playable frame rates, realistically, of course, we don't know if G-Sync was on, and we.
Well, and also, I don't know if this is where they're pulling it from, but Whiskey Omega on Twitch is saying Shadow of the Tomb Raider is running between 30 and 60 with ray tracing on at 2080 Ti at 1080p. So, you know, it's definitely going to be an impact.
That's a lot faster than it could have ever run on previous hardware.
Oh, definitely.
It's the truth when they say that.
Right. I mean, but that's sort of the let's get right into it. The controversy with RTX, with the ray tracing thing, everybody was like, where's my performance numbers? Obviously, everybody assumed it's going to be bad, horrible. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of people are like, this is terrible. Why should I buy, a 2080 over a 1080? And the reaction was, I mean, I guess it was harsher than I expected. Obviously it's just anecdotal reports I've seen from people and all the comments and a lot of the stories at other places. People are kind of think this is like, it's no big deal. We waited 2 years for this ray tracing thing. Do you think that reaction is fair, Brad?
Yes. If for anybody who's listening, if you haven't recommended it, I have like 2,000 words down from the review. Yes. I recommend you going and reading that for actual like deep context, because during a chat things come and go.
Yeah, I'm going to drop it in the chat right now.
But I can understand both reactions, because this is a big shift for graphics technology, and if it can happen, awesome, because the end of the line is you're getting movie quality graphics. The thing is, we're still at the beginning of the line, as we were just talking about the visual quality of these games. And like DirectX 12, we don't know how long it'll take for this to really get off the ground, right? And if you look at the actual CUDA core counts from this generation 20 series to the last generation 10 series, you don't see the sizable CUDA core counts that you would see in previous generational shifts from Nvidia. So you're likely not going to see as much of a performance uptick in traditional games that aren't using ray tracing. This is just me speculating, by the way.
Right, because they do have redesigned shader engine, right? So
yeah, they have redesigned streaming multiprocessors. They have, they can have a speed boost. I mean, they listed clock speeds, but these previous generations overclock like a champ. So yeah, like if you think back to the GTX 10 series, the 1070 was faster than the GTX 980 Ti. If you look at the CUDA core count for this, the GTX 20 or RTX 2080 has 500 fewer CUDA cores than the GTX 1080 Ti, which we'll have to see what the processor, the architectural changes bring, but that indicates that it could be around the same level of performance as the GTX 1080 Ti for about the same price 2 years later in traditional games. So we're going to have to wait and see for reviews. And I think that's where the concern a lot of people have. That's the concern I have. I actually had an article going up today talking about, hey, here's all the pre-orders you can do, but I wouldn't personally put my own money on any of this at this time because there are too many question marks. So I would recommend everybody wait for reviews.
So here's the question, though. Yeah, I mean, I just want to bring up, so like, just for an example, we went from CUDA cores, GTX 680, we went from 1,500 to 2,000 with the 980, and from the 980 to the 1080, we went to 2,500 CUDA cores.
No, let me flash that back on.
Yeah. No, and so the RTX 2080 is 3,000 CUDA cores. So
it's a bit of a jump, yeah. I get what you're saying.
It's a bit of a jump, but I guess I think my point that I sort of took away from the keynote yesterday was we're looking at Nvidia saying, you know what, you don't need 900 frames a second to play Counter-Strike. global operations or to play Fortnite. And it's clear that people are not buying 4K panels at 144 hertz. There are options out there, but the vast majority aren't. Rather than giving you all these cores, rather than giving you more frame rates that don't matter, we need to work on starting ray tracing. Isn't that
like the old AMD joke? Highest quality pixels.
Right, highest quality. But isn't that, I mean, something, that's what I think is like, it's a fair, if that's really what they're trying to do, then that's admirable, I suppose. But it's not necessarily good for consumers. For early adopters, anyway.
Yes, I agree with what you're saying. If they're starting the shift, which is, I think, honestly, part of what they're trying to do, is start the shift towards ray tracing and stuff, then this is the setup phase. But I can understand consumers, other people who are aware of saying, okay, it's been 2 years. You want me to spend $500 on a RTX 2070 that's going to have potentially roughly the same performance in traditional games as a GTX 1080 that cost $600 2 years ago. So
right. With no indication of how soon you'll actually see any benefit from adopting that technology.
Well, I mean,
that's the thing, right? Because like DirectX 12 has been a thing forever. AMD's had hardware inside of its graphics cards for DirectX 12 forever, and we're still waiting for that benefit because people haven't jumped on the DX12 bandwagon as much as everybody expected it would. So that's part of the danger here. That's the reason I say don't necessarily pre-order, wait for reviews.
Yeah, and it does very much come down to developer relations.
Yes.
Well, he kept saying it was just real easy. It just works.
Works.
Bastel's making a good point that in the meantime, before everyone gets to the ray tracing part, developers are still going to have to do both. They're going to have to do the traditional way and the ray tracing way. So now they're almost kind of doing double duty for a while. So in some ways that's kind of a detriment. But I mean that always happens when you try to push things forward. So.
Yeah, it depends on the technical implementation. I think NVIDIA is actually awfully clever to get out ahead of this with RTX because they can offer GameWorks style tools. Or I forget, they have a name for it, but I forget what it was. Sure. They announced them earlier this year where they're like, look, man, we're starting to get ahead of this. Here, just take our code. Here's a box of code. You can put 100 lines of your own code in there and it'll work for you, which is what they did back when GameWorks first started coming out with The Witcher 3 and everything like that. And so I think that's what they're trying to do. I think it's also clever to call it RTX because when you think of the DirectX ray tracing protocol, RTX are kind of letters that come to your mind. So now it's kind of blending NVIDIA's hardware into your mind with just ray tracing in general. Right.
And we sort of talked about this yesterday because, of course, GameWorks has been a controversial program at NVIDIA. The backstory is they were accused of developers who use GameWorks were said to not be able to change that code. And, of course...
It depends. From what I've heard, it depends.
Yeah, and I mean, the conspiracy theory, not just conspiracy theory, a lot of people were accusing NVIDIA of trying to use that to hurt AMD. But at the same time, to be fair, if developers aren't going to use these new features because they don't have time or money or resources... If this is making it easier for them, isn't that a plus for a gamer in the end, rather than just kind of like playing, we need to be helpful to our competitors?
The interesting thing to me is that I don't think that existing GameWorks, like Hairworks and stuff like that, necessarily were to destroy AMD, because it hammered performance even on NVIDIA cards. They were just really high-end, really hardcore, expensive visual effects. With the ray tracing, with this RTX stuff, I mean, if developers implement this, I mean, the performance will still be just as bad on GTX 10 series cards, just as bad as AMD cards.
Right.
So
that encourages people to buy an RTX card, though. So. But I just want to point that out, and I also, to be fair, I just want to make sure that people know NVIDIA's also always claimed that was not true. Those allegations of GameWorks. I was talking to Will Smith earlier because he was interested in talking about this card. We were talking about the old days and sort of how. And my concern was you don't want to be the first person to buy this card. I mean, there's definitely people who like to be there because you're a show off. We understand that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's people like, if this new feature doesn't really run at speed that you hope it would, all you're really getting is a card that can run some of the cool demos, then you'd never run that part again, and you basically wait for the RTX 3080 to where you really get where it really steps up. Is you got any feeling for whether that could happen here, or just too early to say?
It's too early to say, but I've got 4 hours of sleep, but I don't mind speculating. I wouldn't be surprised if we've never seen a TI and a 1080 launch at the same time. Usually it's 2 or 3 quarters later. It could be because this new 2080 Ti is going to be faster than the GTX 1080 Ti. It's going to be the fastest card you could ever buy, pretty much. It's going to be able to power the 144 hertz monitors, G-Sync HDR monitors that just came out, so that's a big part of it. I think by also launching right now, AMD is also already developing GPUs on the 7-nanometer process technology. This year is just for data center use. Next year could be consumer use. So I won't be surprised if next year we see basically a refresh of these RTX cards, but on a smaller process. And I think the jump down to 7-nanometer or whatever for Nvidia will be a much more significant jump than the jump from GTX 10 Series 16 to RTX Series 12 is now. So we'd see more speed gains and whatnot.
So
I'm just pulling that out of my butt. So
if we are on the path of speculation, what kind of performance would you want to see out of this card to make it worthwhile for people to adopt it?
It's rough. I don't know if I can answer that right off the bat.
Yeah, because go ahead.
I don't know enough about how much of a difference the streaming multiprocessor makes. I don't know enough of a different. I mean, if you're still paying with ray tracing being in the future, if you're expected to pay the same price premium right now as you did 2 years ago for the same level of traditional game performance, I think that's kind of a tough sell. I'm also interested to see, with ray tracing being such a big deal, how reviewers like me are supposed to test this card when it comes out. Because when it does come out on September 20th, just a month from now, right now there are no games with ray tracing. So if ray tracing is such a big deal, how are we going to measure that kind of jump from the 10 series to the 20 series?
Yeah, that's what we were talking about yesterday. How are reviewers expected to benchmark that? If there's not any widespread utilities. Do you have any thoughts, early sleepy thoughts on how you're going to be testing that?
I'm obviously going to run traditional game suite. I'm hoping that how they teased the Battlefield 5 open beta for early September. I'm hoping that has ray tracing in it and stays in effect long enough, or maybe they give reviewers drivers early so that we can test Battlefield 5 with ray tracing on during the open beta. But we'll have to see. If I do have early drivers and stuff, I'm not going to be able to tell you guys about it. So you guys be in the audience.
Maybe this is something you also can't tell us, but eLopez580 is asking, Brad, do you have a 2080 right now that you can bring home, or is it going to be shipped to you later?
No, but I have a Cyberpunk.
Nice. Cyberpunk. Teasing for the later section. We got a couple other questions from the chat.
For what it's worth, like I said in the beginning, where I'm at right now, I know the exact same stuff you did. I mean, I got to go and watch Battlefield 5 being played and whatnot in the back room. That's the extent of it. I have all the exact same information that you do.
All right. Well, you have more knowledge than I do. Information's a different thing, but Jacques on YouTube's asking, he hears it all the time, but you shouldn't pre-order, but there in Holland, he can always return it within 30 days, so what's the risk?
I guess you can pre-order if you want. You want to loan somebody $1,000 for something you don't know if it's going to pan out.
But it's not going to get worse. I mean, I just can't imagine. I sort of think.
I could imagine traditional games performance staying pretty stagnant on the one jump. So like the 2070 might have traditional game performance of the GTX 1080.
Right.
So I wouldn't spend $800 on that necessarily.
It's for the promise of ray tracing, though, right? I mean, that's sort of the. But so here's the thing, and I asked this of Adam yesterday. If if he's like, hey, Brad, I just gave you $500 for, being best person ever on the world. Your daughter says, Dad, here's $500. I've been saving it. Broke open the piggy bank.
Those are two different scenarios.
What are you going to buy? Would you go out and buy a 1080?
One's free money, one's stealing from your child.
No, that's your child going, gosh. Yeah, all the food and those diapers. You think that was free? I've been keeping tabs.
I don't know if you can technically steal from your children if they're under 18.
True.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
Well,
but I'm just saying, if you had to go out, you had a bag of money. Do you buy a 1080 or a 2080 for $100 more?
I would wait for reviews.
I mean, a 2070.
I'm 100% wait for reviews kind of guy. I always am. I don't suggest pre-ordering games.
Yeah,
I especially don't suggest pre-ordering hardware. I tweeted earlier today, this reminds me of the original first-gen Ryzen situation, where everyone's like, yeah, I'm pre-ordering now because this is, 8 cores, awesome, etc. But it turns out a lot of people were gamers, and like I did an article about it, that first-gen Ryzen had basically the same gaming performance of my overclocked 3570K. So new, bleeding-edge new hardware often has quirks that you don't know about. So I always especially recommend not pre-ordering when it's all new.
And there's not much information right now either. I mean, I feel like that's the biggest takeaway from your article this morning about all the aftermarket cards. Pretty much that was what you said for every single card. Like, it has OC in the name, but who knows what that overclock really is.
Yeah,
they're all available for pre-order, and none of them have clock speeds listed. Among a couple of the manufacturers, you can go to their websites. It's not in their product listings, and find some additional power phase details and nerdy stuff like that. That's only a couple of them. You can't find it in the listing. Nobody's talking clock speeds. I tried asking a few people today.
Jeez.
So that's
well. Can we talk a little bit about pricing? Because yesterday, we got a link to the Nvidia's website, and it ended up having prices that were 200 higher than what Jensen said on stage. What are the pricing? What's that looking like overall? Not only of the Founders Edition, but also of the partner cards.
What am I looking at? Oh, yeah. Well, I think that was confused because those prices are for the Founders Edition cards. So those always cost more, or theoretically cost more. It's looking at the pre-orders that went available on Newegg. It's looking like similar to the GTX 10 series situation, where they said it's starting at X price. Ours is going to be X more. But as it turns out, all the other manufacturers treat the Founders Edition price as the baseline price, basically, and everything's more expensive than that even. They're really expensive right now. But theoretically, the 2080 Ti is $999 for reference.
Theoretically.
Or not reference, but starting price for models, because Asus is selling a blower fan reference style cooler, but with a plastic shroud for $1,200.
It looks so cheap. It's so bad.
Don't buy that.
But this is clearly just early. I mean, everybody's on allocation for these things. There aren't going to be that many, so the price is going to be high. You see the same thing with CPUs, where it's marked up a couple $100 on Newegg for the day of sale.
Because they can.
Yeah, because what are you going to do, right? It's
So it's theoretically $1,000 starting price for the 2080 Ti, $1,200 for the Founders Edition. The Founders Edition cards all come with overclocks, by the way. Those are the one cards that you can find clock information for, the ones that Nvidia is selling. The 2080 is $700 starting price theoretically. Again, theoretically, $800 for the overclocked Founders Edition, and the 2070 is $500 starting price. Which is crazy that's always been traditionally the 80 tier cards starting price, $500. Just a couple generations ago, the 70 tier was $370 for the 970. $330. Yeah, now it's $500. That's a jump. Or $600 for the Founders Edition, which again is overclocked.
Yeah, prices are nuts.
Yeah. Well, not to derail you, but we've got so many questions lining up for the chat. Everybody wants to know the information from you, Brad. And
they missed you yesterday.
They really did. It's great to have Brad on the show. Mr. Jack on YouTube's asking, is there any information if the new series will implement full HDMI spec and support active sync?
They did not go into any hard details like that, so.
Okay. Jorge Santana is asking, AMD has ray tracing. Will Navi support it and next-gen consoles powered by Navi?
We're gonna have to see what happens with Navi. I mean, ray tracing is not proprietary to Nvidia, even though Nvidia wants you to think that it is in its marketing. RTX is proprietary to Nvidia. Their whole platformer stuff, their RT cores, their whatnot, their GameWorks or VR, whatever it's called this time around. So yeah, Intel can make its own ray tracing stuff. It's a standard in DirectX ray tracing. So there is room for other manufacturers to create their own open standards even and implementations.
Devil Assassin's asking some rumors out there saying that the 20 series is just a refresh of the 10 series with the implemented tensor cores. Do you agree?
Word that again? Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Rumors are saying that the 20 series is just a refresh of the 10 series with implemented tensor cores. Do you agree?
No, I don't agree, because they've re-engineered the streaming multiprocessors underneath it. If anything, it's more like Volta than Pascal, from what I'm gathering so far, from looking at the Turing GPU specs that they released and stuff. But it's, it has all the Volta stuff kind of packed into it, the Turing stuff. It's nothing at all like Pascal, I don't think. It is to some degree, but no, I would not call it that.
Okay. Enigmatastic on Twitch is asking, any idea on whether the new cards will have exclusive drivers? Will GeForce Experience no longer require you to log in with an email?
I can answer that one.
No. I wouldn't be surprised if it has its own branch of drivers because it is so fundamentally different, but we'll see. The drivers are big these days, so they might just still cram everything in together for simplicity.
E. Lopez 580 is wondering if the price of the 2080 Ti means that the Titan line for prosumer gamer is over. Or are they going to introduce something even higher?
$1,500.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this might be a weird generation, so I'm interested to see what next generation looks like. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see a Titan this time around. Because, like I said, I suspect there might be a refresh next year.
RTX Titan. That's a good name. It just rolls off the tongue.
Titan RTX.
Titan RTX.
T. Turn.
Man, my video is severely desynced. Hopefully y'all's
you look
better.
Fine on our end.
Yeah, you're looking fine on our end. That's good.
Okay, good. I can hear you. That's the good part.
Perfect.
I got a question about the tensor cores. I'm going to just interject my own question. So we have three cores. We have sort of like legacy cores for old gamings. We have ray tracing core, and then we have these tensor cores. Like there's like a tensor processing. Do you think we're going to get any support out of games or developers? What the heck are we going to use that for in PC in the near future?
Well, I think Jensen actually explained it pretty well yesterday that the tensor cores are helping the RT cores because ray tracing, the problem with real-time ray tracing is that it's awfully noisy. It's awfully computationally expensive, so everything looks grainy. So they're using these tensor cores to clean up the images at the end. They're saying it's advanced enough to be able to catch where it is grainy and figure out that it's not supposed to be grainy and fix it. The part that was really interesting to me, I was reading up more on it today because I was doing an article about it, and they didn't actually talk much about it aside from saying that it uses tensor cores. But there's the new deep learning super sampling, which basically uses the tensor cores to enhance super sampling and create like this ultra crisp picture. And again, that'll be an RTX exclusive, obviously, because it uses tensor cores. But those are two actual, things that people can use in games now, and they have about 20 games lined up. I did an article today that use one or the other or both, including PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds is going to use the deep learning super sampling. So
really,
yeah, Ark Survival Evolved, some big ones.
Nice. Some more questions for you.
Sure.
Timothy Baldridge, how do you see this transition to ray tracing compared to older transitions, like going to the GeForce FX programmable shaders from fixed pipelines?
I think it'll wind up happening. That's what my gut reaction, because it's not just Nvidia pushing this. Earlier this year, DirectX ray tracing got pushed out. Everyone's behind this, at least in theory. I consider this generation, my initial gut instinct is that it's going to be like a transitional generation. That's the reason they're pricing it so high. They're putting them out now so that developers know, hey, this is going to be a thing for us. Start thinking about it. And then I think it'll probably be more appealing in future generations, I guess. I don't know. I haven't tested it yet, so.
There's a lot of chatter in the chat about mining. At Aribahabat is asking, what's the impact of RTX on the mining market? Tell us.
I have no idea, man. I have no idea if miners even figured out how to use it. I would guess that miners were not buying $2,000 freaking or $3,000 Titan Vs to figure out how to get Volta GPUs mining efficiently. So I would be surprised if they can leverage that immediately, at least for mining operations, especially with prices being in the dumps like they are now.
When does the first Ray coin come out? All those coins from all the ray tracing. Timothy Baldridge is asking again, DLSS could come automatic on many could that come automatic on many games? It could be a better form of TAA.
It could if they implement it. I mean, NVIDIA's had other kinds of alternative anti-aliasing and stuff before, other forms of super sampling. It depends on whether or not it's implemented. If it's as effective as they say it is, I mean, you got to imagine NVIDIA commands a large chunk of the graphics card market, and, they have new hardware out, so they might gobble even more up. So there's incentive for developers to put those new features to use for the gamers who want them, who are buying this new hardware, right?
Half-Baked Snake on Twitch is asking, how does RTX affect frame... I'm trying to reword it. How does RTX have an effect on frame rate in normal games? Is it something you can turn on even though the game doesn't have it in it? Or are you going to have to manually do that, or is the developer going to give you that option?
I don't know yet. We haven't seen games with it. I mean, just based on the fact that not RTX, but ray tracing itself won't work on Pascal or AMD cards or any cards but these, I would suspect it would have to be a toggle, right? That he was toggling it last night on stage. Here's it on, here's it off. So that's what I would expect. Maybe not in real time like that, but at least as a menu option. That would be my guess. And I would expect it to give a frame rate hit because ray tracing does take a lot of GPU grunt. So I would expect it to affect performance.
Sorry, Brad, I'm keeping going with these questions because the people want to know.
No, I was going to ask another question, but
all right, no, go for it. Go for it. Yeah.
I can't remember now. Damn it! It was about it was about ray tracing, and it does feel like it does need a patch. But God, what the heck was I going to ask? You know what, Adam, you need to ask, and I'll try to rattle it out of my brain.
All right. Well, a lot of people are asking about benchmarks. They just want to see the benchmarks, Brad. And then Nelly over on YouTube is specifically saying, technically, if there's no NDA, can't somebody at Gamescom just run a few benchmarks while no one's watching, Brad?
Well, I would suspect that they would not put benchmarking software on the computer where they're running ray tracing demos.
I mean, what if you accidentally just slipped a thumb drive in with some benchmarks?
So that has
super
happened,
subtle,
right? Everybody's done it before. In fact,
everyone has done it before, but let me tell you, they had rows of like maybe 7 or 8 computers set up, face to face for people to have demo stations, and they had 2 people on each side looking over the shoulders of everybody to make sure nothing funky was going on.
Yeah, I know. I will give you a story. Recently, Mark Hockman was at a Qualcomm event because they have Windows on ARM. Mm-hmm. So he's like, "Hey, can I do something here?" They're like, "Oh yeah, go ahead." Because it's just some person they pay to watch people, make sure they don't steal stuff. So he installs some benchmarks, start running benchmarks. He gets about halfway through one of them, the second one. They're like, "Oh, you need to stop that." He's like, "Can I just let it finish?" He's like, "No, stop right now." And I will say at Computex, at the AMD booth where they had Threadripper all set up and running and everything, I was like, "Oh, it's set up." And I went over there. Of course, everybody's like seeing what they can check. They were smart. They had a monitor hooked up, but no mouse and keyboard. So I guess the thing is to bring your own mouse and keyboard to these things. Wow, dang it. I wanted to ask about ray tracing and performance testing. And of course now I forgot because I'm just gone. But
it'll be tricky. I mean, nobody's done it, so we're gonna have to figure out the best methods for it.
So I do have a question too. A lot of the reaction I think from everybody was like, clearly because they did not break out frame rates, they did not break out that X part is faster than Y part. Everybody is assuming it's going to be worse, right? I mean, everybody's absolutely sure. I mean, which is interesting, I think.
I think looking at the core counts, knowing that they didn't like tremendously overhaul the streaming microprocessors, I don't think it'll necessarily be worse. It wouldn't be worse like 2070 to 1070. We're talking worse 2070 versus 1080, by the way. But I don't think it'll necessarily be substantially better. And I think that's probably a better way to phrase the concern. But again, we're going to have to wait for benchmarks because they have all kinds of technology in here, man. So going to have to wait.
Yamil is asking, Brad, where do you think this generation will fall in terms of performance per dollar? Will it be better or worse than buying a Pascal GPU to play current games?
To play current games, right now, I would say Pascal would probably be better performance per dollar, especially, I mean, you can't tell until you get reviews. I'm going to backtrack. You can't tell because you don't know. But if you believe that it's possible that they'll have that kind of not substantial performance jump, then it's likely that the current gen Pascal parts would be better performance per dollar once they start dropping in price.
I was just going to say that.
To this.
But I mean, to be fair, this comes back to my question. Again, you've got a bag of cash. You're sitting on like a 770, right? You've got this bag of cash you stole from your kid's room at night, and you're going, what should I buy? No, don't steal money from your kids. Obviously, that's not right. But I'm just saying, if I'm going to go out and I have this amount of money, I swear to God, who the hell is going to buy a 1080 Ti or 1080 at this point?
But the thing is that we don't have performance numbers yet, so it's really hard to make that call. And so let's just say,
also, for theory,
in theory, the performance is not substantial at all. Like the jump is not substantial.
It's a pivot. It's going to be a pivot.
Right. So it's a pivot instead of a jump, right? And suddenly the 1080 and the 1080 Ti are $100 less than they are now. I mean, I think it makes it very compelling to stay with the previous generation at that point if all you're playing are more traditional games that you're not going to be trying to chase after ray tracing because you want to be the coolest kid on the block.
Or we have to do the money test then. $450 1080 or $600 for the 2070?
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
700 for the 2070 is 500. It's not
so
theoretically
but we're seeing like 600-ish right now. So I think
600 versus 450. Maybe say a good deal on that 1080.
1080 or 1080
I'm sorry,
Ti?
500. I mean, it's supposed to be $500.
1080.
It's going to settle down. It'll be $500 for 2070.
Yeah, we'll see.
RTX 2070 for $500. Your money, Elena. We know you're the money person. Or
all right, here we go.
1080 for $400. 425. 425.
425
It's only
is a bad deal.
$75 difference.
I mean, hell, I don't want ray tracing. You're going to go to a LAN party and be like, oh, where's the ray tracing?
No, the thing is that's still too high because Brad remembers this when Pascal came out, like the spring, suddenly like Maxwell was like fire sale prices. Like you could get a 980 for something like $200 and something, I think, if I remember right. It was insane.
Right.
It was just like, these have got to go. Like it was just so
all the
cheap.
Pascal cards were selling for inflated prices at the same time.
Yeah. So if we're talking about a situation like that, then obviously I would go last gen. If we're talking about a difference of $75, then maybe I would consider going with the $500 card.
So you're saying you would buy the 1080 for $350. It's not going to be $300. Ain't going to happen, right?
It happened last gen.
Yeah, but Pascal is not Maxwell, right? So if we're talking about $350 for 1080 versus say $500 for 2070, now what? Same thing?
I would probably go last gen. Because the thing is, no one's given us a roadmap, right? No one's saying you can start to expect these games with ray tracing at this time. So it could end up being like DX12, where it's been 4 years since they've been talking about it. That's a long time, man.
Yeah, well, it's a fair point.
Well, and what about on the production side? So are those tensor cores going to have any good effect for the video editor like me? You know, could that be a reason to go the 20 series? Because sure, maybe you don't get a huge jump in current games, but maybe you also get a performance gain in professional applications?
There could be something cool. I mean, the tensor cores for AI, for photography and video, all that inference stuff. I'm sure Adobe will implement that in about 2028.
It's true. So. Good point.
I was telling you guys I met Alejandro. Hello, Alejandro, if you're watching. I met him and was talking to him last night, a full nerd fan at the event. Woo-hoo. And he's an astrophysicist who uses giant banks of 1080 Ti's to do his thing. And he was actually really excited about the tensor cores coming to consumer products. So something like that, it could be very game changing for scientists and stuff.
Right.
And by the way, I saw a Craigslist ad from Alejandro. 50 1080 Ti's for your price, $500, hardly used, brand new.
I just want to circle back because we were talking about this. We're getting pretty in deep about performance numbers and stuff. Or would you pay this for a Pascal instead of this for a GTX, a Turing? We don't know that they're going to be slower. They could very well be faster.
Right.
I mean, it's not. I just want to be 100% clear because the audience, especially, that we're not saying that these cards are slower.
I did start my answer with that I don't know anything about performance.
And I do think people are overreacting. I think if performance is, small bit, single digit better, but right turn to ray tracing, what's there to lose? Who the hell's going to go out buy 1080 to save $100? I mean, there are people.
Yeah,
I mean, I think you're
underestimating.
I think you are underestimating what people are willing to do with their budgets, because not all of us are willing to raid someone else's piggy bank.
But this always comes down to developers. It's about developers, right? Just so Ballmer said. It's like whenever I hear like Intel people are like, "Hey, our AVX 512 performance," it's like, yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, who uses it? Well, ain't no one. Like it's hard to justify all these instruction set features that all the CPU makers have if it's just no one implements it, or it takes 5 years for it to be implemented. So
again, like I said, no roadmap.
Yeah, but
that's why I personally think that this is has a high potential of being like a transition generation. Like I'm saying, a baby step, and the next year we'll see a refresh. That not only is there more ray trace games available to play now, but it's the next node up. It's to 7 nanometer. You'll get the great, speed improvements and architecture improvements. And then if you've been holding out and didn't get this one, you got ray tracing and a faster card, a year from now or whatever.
So I actually have a question related to that because I'm not as steeped in the GPU world as everyone else is here. Is this something that everyone actually wants, or is this going to be more like VR where it's really hot at first, but it could die off?
The difference between this and VR is you don't need to dedicate a living room to it. I think that alone gives it, much greater chances.
Right.
But the end result for this, if, it progresses, it's been the promise for 20 years still, is that, the Avengers movies are your games. The CGI quality graphics are the kind of stuff that you're seeing in a game, down the line. You couldn't get that with rasterized graphics. Or how they're traditionally rendered. So yeah, everyone says it's a good idea. It depends how long the road is going to be to get there.
I think it's more.
And this is a huge jump. Like I was saying, if you render these games at 30 frames per second to 60 frames per second, I think somebody said in the comments. I mean, there's no way that a Pascal card could do that. The RT cores and the tensor cores are a big leap forward.
Yeah, I think maybe it's more analogous to DX12, where we've been waiting.
I know, but people say they want things and then they don't happen.
Yeah, true.
DirectX 12, it wound up being very developer intensive. Like you got to roll up your sleeves and get in the nitty gritty to get what you want out of DirectX 12. So it costs a lot of money. It's going to depend on how easy you can implement ray tracing. And I don't know if we have the answer to that yet.
Oh, that's what I remember. That's what I can ask. So here's the thing, and it brings it up because Jensen said it just works. I swear to God, like every third sentence. Yep. Right. So doesn't that sort of impart like the ray tracing, the ability? It sounds like the ability to add ray tracing into games is going to be a snap, right? I mean, if he keeps saying it just works, then It's not going to be like DX12 where it's like, oh my God, we've got to devote a lot of engineers just to make this damn thing work now. This is just simply something that gets dropped into a game. You blow out a patch, and you've got CS:GO with ray tracing, right? I mean, I don't. I'm just going to am I going too far? Because I mean, when you say it just works like 25 times, I guess it just works.
I don't disagree with you. I think that they are confident in their. I'm guessing that that's in reference to their ray tracing GameWorks style tools. So it'll be their tools. I'm not sure how easy it would be if you're using your own tools. So I wouldn't. With how often you use it, I agree with you that I wouldn't be surprised if it's not. It just works, but it's not. Like working on DirectX 12 where you're just cussing at the end of the day.
Some more questions?
Yeah, definitely.
Mr. Flops asked a while ago, what type of PCIe do these cards run? PCIe 4?
They didn't mention that, so I would assume PCI 3 because there's not even PCI 4 motherboards.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see if we're even near. And are we even near by 16 bandwidth out of it? It's just an old question that nobody cares about anymore. So
they do have the interesting. They switch from traditional, SLI connectors to the NVLink bridge. So
yeah, that's interesting, right?
Yeah, when you're moving, think about the amount of data that it would take to as many pixels as two RTX 1080 Ti's can push, feeding a 144 hertz 4K monitor. That's a lot of data. So I'm not surprised to see them move that down, NVLink down from the business class into consumers.
Do you think this means SLI will come back, Brad?
Well, 1070 doesn't support it.
2070.
Sorry, 2070.
That's for the cheap seats, Elena. For those people like deciding
$500 is now
decide,
the cheap seats.
Those are for the people who are like, well, I could get a 1080 for that price. $100, I can go out and buy a case.
It's such a weird reversal because originally, like SLI was supposed to be a way to, get more from a budget range card. Eventually, you would just add in that second card, and now it's just blocked. It's just blocked off from people who would have done that.
Intel Overdrive, for old timers who remember, was a socket that Intel put on motherboards. You can overdrive it with it. It basically was another socket, and it was just like nobody ever put the damn thing in. It was just like just putting that in there with the promise of you get one more thing. Then that's pretty much what SLI turned into at the end, which is sad. Oh, I mean, couldn't you see it though? I mean, why go through the expense of adding NVLink unless there's going to be another push for SLI again?
Who was I watching today? I think it was J2 Cents videos, and he was saying that his sources have heard that they're going to make a push for it again. Actually, so who knows? Maybe. But I mean, if anything was going to bring it back, it was going to be DirectX 12, right? Because the whole thing about DirectX 12 is that you can tell it to work together and make it all happen. So, and that didn't happen. It
not
killed
immediately.
Everything off.
It's just taken a while, right? I mean, it sort of seems like they're looking forward to maybe you're going to have ray tracing, and maybe you really do need two 2080 or 2080 Ti cards to get 80 frames a second at a reasonable resolution with these things.
Mm-hmm.
Man,
this is the way it was. This is the way it was, though, right? This is just, I don't understand why people are just, people today are just so spoiled.
We are.
You get like what used to be top shelf performance for $180, and everybody's complaining about like.
This is what happens when you spoil the people.
People used to be like happy to like, oh my God, I can do this with just 2 cards instead of 3 or 4.
And that's the reason we have 32 cores on the CPU.
Yeah. Question, Brad Bastel over on Twitch is asking about the cooler design on the Founders Edition cards. Is it really that quiet? Were you able to check it out?
I was around running cards. They had a bunch of really awesome mods by like some really top modders. You can check them out, I think, in NVIDIA's GeForce Garage series on their website. And they were all out and about. You can check them out. But at an event like that, there's loud music playing, there's people talking. It's not a good place to try to figure out how loud it is. But NVIDIA typically doesn't make claims that aren't true. They might say something like last night, Jensen said, the 2070 is X amount faster than a 1080 Ti, but he was specifically referring to RTX ops. So he's not making that up. It is that much faster in that thing. So if he says, it's 5 times quieter than what we had before, based on his history, I will treat that at his word until we're able to test it at least. Take it at face value.
Also, Noel Martinez asked over on Facebook, so what the hell does AMD do now? How do you respond to this? Could they take the Ryzen path and super undercut them? Can they afford to do that?
Well, they're giving away 3 free games with RTX 580s now, so I don't know. Vega has HBM2 memory, and that stuff's not cheap. I think one of the saving graces for AMD at this point is that NVIDIA's cards are priced so high. Because when I originally, I pre-write a bunch of my articles when I, expect to be covering something live like this. And one of my kickers was I originally said, the RTX 2080 has effectively killed any reason to buy a Vega 64. But in my actual article, I had to change that because with it being $700 to $800, there's still a lot of room in the middle for if you want to get adaptive sync and you want to get high frame rates at like 1440p, Vega 64 probably looks like a more attractive option now that this new generation of NVIDIA cards are out. Although, again, we're going to have to wait to see towards testing.
Nice. And
hopefully that makes sense. I'm kind of rambling. I'm getting tired.
So to go off of the games that were mentioned, what do all of us think about the 24 list? Kindis is saying that he thinks that most of them are meh, or 3 or 4 that are kind of interesting. What do you think? Do you think that's the indication?
The big 3 that they announced. I love the Tomb Raider series. I love the Battlefield series, and I love the Metro series. So I'm excited for those 3 alone off the bat.
Yeah, Metro.
And like I said, I was perusing the list. PUBG's getting the deep learning super sampling. Ark Survival Evolved is janky. I don't like it, but a lot of people do. So, if it can help clean that up a little bit, great.
Oh, yeah, and PUBG's a big deal, right? So.
Oh, yeah.
And Battlefield, despite all the controversy, it's, that's always a AAA game, and I look forward to blowing some buildings up.
Nice.
And seeing the reflections in shiny new cars.
Yeah, that is a crazy thing. It's like, all right, boss, where'd you take all the cars from the car lot? Oh, I stored them over there in that street. There's going to be a battle there today. We just have them waxed in detail.
So what do you guys think overall of the presentation? So we can move on to the PC gear at Gamescom. I do want to hear about that.
Do we have time for that?
Let's I definitely want to touch on a little bit. But yeah, Brad, you excited? Thumbs up.
Wait, looking at this game list, Hitman 2 is also getting DLSS, and I love it. I love the Hitman series.
Yeah, Hitman's awesome.
So Serious Sam 4 is getting it. I also love the Serious Sam series. Final Fantasy 15, which, everyone who wanted to play that probably has already. But
but if you want to be around a gorgeous boy band, you can spend more time with them.
Yeah. Most people, well, to be fair, most people are probably like me. They've started to play it, and there's no chance they finished it yet. So now's your chance.
You have any last thoughts on the big 2080 breakout?
I'm just really interested to see where performance lands. Given those prices, it'll just really put everything into context.
Yeah. We have to, you always want to see what it's going to be. I still also would agree with that, but at the same time, I'd have a hard time going out and buy a 1080 Ti. It just doesn't, to me, make any sense.
But you never will go backwards. That's just your thing.
It's just what's going to happen is these features are going to get added. There's a lot of push for. This is a big moment. This is ray tracing finally consumer gaming. It's just like it's been coming forever.
Right.
So I think it's a big deal. It
is a big deal. I'm just thinking that a lot of people do have budgets they're working with, so they just might buy a last gen card, play that for a while until this all gets to a point where they feel it's ready for them to take that next jump.
Yeah, I think that's...
And save some cash in the process.
I think it's reasonable, but I just sort of think, I don't think my gut says this is not. We're not going to go so far backwards or backwards at all that it's worth not having these features.
It's not about going backwards, but there's just a lot of people who take their time with their games list. They're not playing all the games when they first launch, or they don't need to play it with all the latest features turned on.
Yeah. Okay. You're well representing the cheap people, Elena. Only buying on humble.
I know where I belong.
Whatever the humble, whatever.
Humble bundles.
Humble. I can't.
Hey, I
even
saved
say
a
it
lot
now,
of cash
bundle.
going that route.
I only play AAA games
humble
after
bundle.
they've been out for 5 years.
This is
Got it in a
I'm
scratch
actually-
off coupon.
I think this has the potential to be like when you look back in history, like one of those like this is where ray tracing got started kind of releases. I also like I keep saying it because I really strongly believe wait for reviews on this. Think about because I always say don't buy for the future right now because you never know how long it's going to take for that future to come. So if it does wind up not having a huge leap in traditional game performance, but does have this ray tracing stuff, I mean, AMD's had async compute inside of its, GCN series for 7 years now, and DirectX 12 today never came. People who bought for that are still waiting for that day. So I think it definitely has the potential to be like a shifting, defining moment in graphics card technology, this series. I also think there are a lot of question marks around it. And like I said, pretty much when I started, I wouldn't personally pre-order. I would wait for reviews and stuff.
But definitely that's coming from a current generation card. Like if you had a 7 series, or even a 9 at this point. Where do you upgrade to,
I don't want to talk about whether it's what is worth upgrading to until I've tested it. Like I have no idea. I don't want to say if you have a 9 series, you should buy this versus this until I've got numbers in front of me.
Sure. That's agreeable to be safe, obviously, especially when we do it. This is a big shift, right? So you don't want to. No one wants to be the first one. You don't want to buy a video card or hardware just to run a tech demo. So
yeah, I don't want to undersell it. I don't want to oversell it. I'm just trying to sit here and say, hey, this could be huge, but it could also be growing pains.
Here's the last thing. I'm gonna bust out the
last thing.
George Alves from Intel PR. This is like forever ago. He's like, yeah. Do you remember all that crap you gave us about the SSC and the Pentium 2 when you did an MP3? Like there was no. If you do that same now if you had bought a Pentium 3 or whatever the hell it was, and you had put in the money for that 3 years later when you're doing your MP3 encode, it would be a quarter of the time on a Pentium 2. So he was like, it takes time, but when it finally arrives, look at the performance difference. In your face, Gordon. I know he wanted to.
3 years is a long time to wait for it, though. I mean, that's a lot of
3
encoding
years
you could
probably
do
wasn't
in that
even-
time.
It was probably like 4 years. It was like forever. CPU instruction sets just take forever to get supported. So, we'll see.
All right.
Sorry.
PC hardware.
PC hardware. We got
Let's talk about Gamescom.
Yeah, so this is my first time in Germany. It's my first time at Gamescom. And actually, it's pretty great compared to E3 or something like that. If you go to E3, it's traditionally called a console show because, sure, there's a lot of PC games, but it's also launching on PC. This is coming to PS4 and PC kind of a deal. But walking around the utterly massive Gamescom floor, it's 11 halls. It's like 2 or 3 times the size of E3, just sheer size and spectacle. There are PCs everywhere. It's great. Some of the things I managed to see today, if you follow me on Twitter, you saw some of the ones that I saw all around the show floor today. You started to see all the custom RTX series cards. So I saw the EVGA custom card, couple different MSI cards. There's a palette card. There was a Gainward RTX 280 actually, or 2080. I'm never gonna get these straight. So yeah, today you could go out there and see all the different kinds of cards are out there. One thing that's interesting is that they all have pretty much the ones that I saw tend to have very large and powerful looking coolers. Looking at that initial wave of stuff, it makes me wonder. One, is it because I'm not trying to circle back to the 2080, but that's how it happened. Is it because it uses a lot of power and generates a lot of heat, or is it because Nvidia is doing a dual blower Founders Edition now, and are they just trying to differentiate by having these bigger, more badass coolers? But that's the trend that I'm seeing for the initial custom ones, at least, that they're bigger and more badass.
So, Brad, very, very important question. Did you see any RGB versions of those cards?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Especially
I love Gordon's face right now.
It was actually really hard to take pictures of stuff because these were all tempered glass PCs, behind. They were in glass boxes in a brightly lit floor, and it was really hard. But the most RGB ones that I saw were the MSI Gaming X Twin and MSI Duke, which were at the Windows portion of the Microsoft booth in just like seizure-inducing PCs.
Sweet.
And if you want RGB, that looks like the one to get.
All right, then.
The fans or the whole fan cowling was RGB?
The whole thing, the whole outer bits and everything.
Nice.
Vegas in a single card.
Yep.
Vegas?
So,
what?
Yeah.
Just kidding.
So, yeah, that was going on. What else did I see today? There are all kinds of badass case mods, especially from European retailers who I'm not familiar with because they're European. But I'm guessing case modding is bigger over there because, like, the Captiva booth, there's a company called Eraser that had a lot of really, like, exotic high-end PCs. Like, everywhere you look, there were PCs. If you go to the EA booth, they had 2 different giant 64-player LAN things going on.
Ooh.
So just everywhere. It was great.
So not much console gaming there.
There is still. I mean, the Nintendo Switch had its thing. What's really interesting compared to E3 or something like that is the weird extra crap. Like, you could play laser tag here. They had an obstacle course in a skate park.
No, I would not want that at an E3.
The obstacle course was actually at the Fortnite thing, too.
Oh,
it's like, you don't go there and play Fortnite. You go to the Fortnite booth and take an obstacle course. But, yeah, it's a really interesting show. At one point, I was in the Gigabyte Aorus booth, and they had, like, a shoutcasted League of Legends match going on live right there. If you look across the street or the hallway, there's the Twitch booth, and they had like an old bearded man in like a tiger jumpsuit or something playing a banjo. So it's like a really interesting event, but there are computers everywhere. They actually have the whole or half of the second floor of one of their halls dedicated entirely to retro gaming. So, like, I was going through there, and they had the Amiga Future, which I guess is a publication or at least a group in Germany, busted out. They had a whole bunch of Amigas. You could play Jaguar. They had old Pong tape, like, that are actually, like, you see the circuit boards and stuff. Play Pong on the old...
Neat.
Yeah.
Sounds like
I also saw the Cyberpunk demo. That's the one video game demo I took today. Cyberpunk 2077 from the makers of Witcher 3, their first-person sci-fi RPG that's coming out at some point. And it is just as amazing looking as everybody said at E3. This time around, they let you, make a couple different choices that you couldn't before if the crowd agreed on it, because you watch it in like a theater. And it looks amazing. I doubt it's going to come out on current gen consoles. People are disagreeing with me on Twitter, but I've seen it and I stand by that.
Nice. Go. You put that on some paper, Brad?
That game's been coming out for years. If you want to write it down.
In 2077, I'm guessing that's the year it's Cyberpunk. Do they still have all the black and leather thing?
Yeah, they're all samurais and neon and leather and stuff.
I'm just thinking, I would have expected it would have been like bell bottoms and wide lapels or something like that. Because you just don't know what fashion's going to be like in 2077.
Then it would have been Afropunk.
Yeah, I mean, and it's the 70s, 2077.
But nice. One thing that was really interesting to me at Gamescom is when you think of like the Microsoft booth at a gaming event, you think you're going to Xbox, right? But actually, if you go to the Microsoft booth, they have just as much space devoted to Windows. They had just as much space, like huge sectioned off. So HP was showing off a bunch of things. That's something that I tried today. That's really awesome. You wrote it up.
Really?
Yeah. The active cooling headsets that use thermal electric in the air cans. They had those at the show. I'm like, are these the ones that keep you freaking cool? I was already sweating because I'm a sweaty guy and it's a game show. It's a trade show. And they're like, yeah. So you pick it up and, they have these cups and inside is the speakers on a metal plate kind of. And if you touch it, it's like so cold to the touch. And you take your finger off and there's residue, condensation there. That's how cold it is. You put on your head and it's genuinely refreshing, even in the middle of a show floor. So
Wow.
I'm really interested.
How's the sound on them, though?
Who cares?
I mean, it didn't seem great.
And he's on a
It
trade
didn't
show
seem
floor.
bad. It didn't seem great. Yeah, it's a trade show floor. It's hard to figure out, again, exactly.
But like my ears are sweating already. It hasn't even
Really?
been that long. Yeah. And yeah, yesterday was horrible.
Yeah, it's hot.
Oh, I do not have this problem.
Yeah.
I'm finding out here in Germany that it's very humid and nobody has air conditioning. And it's
Ooh. Not even the
fragrant.
hotel room?
Oh, that's interesting.
Not very good air conditioning. They have like a dial where you can kind of move a rotating dial, and it says plus on the top and minus on the bottom, but it doesn't actually tell you the temperature, and it's not really getting that much cooler.
Oh.
That's
So you're
sad.
saying it's fragrant over there?
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's a good term.
So picture a trade event in the middle of this.
Oh, yeah, with 11 halls full of people. Ooh.
Yeah.
I gotta say, Taiwan, Taipei is really super hot and humid, but they got the air conditioning down. Like every single place has like your dad's station wagon air conditioning. Like they turn that on, you get a nosebleed because it was so cold. That 75 Chevy kind of like Taiwan everywhere. It's like that. That's terrible. Interesting. I heard from people who went to the AMD event, not to be crazy, but same thing in Italy. There was no air conditioning at the AMD Threadripper event. So
Yeah.
Just not great.
Yikes.
Hayden was complaining about it. Hayden's actually here covering Gamescom for us too. We'll have articles from him soon. I was looking at the hardware. He's looking more at the actual games. And he's spent all summer in Europe, and he's been in really humid France. And he's like, I did not expect it to be this unpleasant in Germany at 80 degrees or whatever it is. So.
Hey, did you get a feel for breakdown where the machines were mostly Intel, AMD? Were they kind of like small socket or big socket machines mostly?
It's hard to tell a lot of them because there are so many giant coolers and RGB going on these days. But there was a healthy mix. There were definitely, a healthy representation for Ryzen. There was, in fact, a giant badass Star Destroyer mod that had Ryzen and blazing red all throughout the middle of it.
Is that
and
on
stuff.
your Twitter feed? Because I totally want to see that.
No, but I actually have, for people who are curious of what I saw at Gamescom, I just filed, it's, like 50 pictures or something like that of all the
right.
coolest things that I saw
I'll
at
go look at
Gamescom. It's
that
going to be
later.
going up on the site sometime this week. I'm not sure
Oh,
when.
okay.
That's-
Yeah.
Yeah,
at lunchtime.
you should go look at that. And I know what it is. I've seen that mod. It's awesome. But you're going to blow your
No,
mind,
this is a
Brad?
different one.
Really?
Are you talking about Sanders Vandervelde? I forget. I don't know. There's one that's been floating around for a few years. This
Yeah.
one's opens up like a sandwich, like a sub.
Oh, really? Is it like 6 feet long?
Yeah.
Is it a? So here's the thing: is it a Jedi Star
no.
Cruiser destroyer or is it an Imperial Star Destroyer?
I think the tag next to it said it was a B-wing.
Really?
No, I'm just.
I was thinking, what? I'm telling you, I've seen it. It's a Jedi
was
Star
funny.
Destroyer.
Oh, that was good.
They should do a B-wing mod. The whole thing would just kind of.
Yes. B-Wing.
It's like a rotisserie. I just modified a rotisserie oven. Yeah, we have to. I think we better let go. Brad, go now. He's starting to lose
Yeah.
it.
Go get some dinner, get some sleep.
Thanks for coming on. I think everybody appreciates it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And I guess we sort of got. Yeah, we got the Q&A earlier. There
Yeah, I
definitely
mean, we
a lot
got people were asking so many questions. We mixed it in, so
Okay.
yeah, we're running a little over, but next week we'll have you back in your normal spot, right?
Yeah,
at
Yes,
home.
indeed.
Maybe he'll be able to say something or maybe not say something. So we don't know.
I don't know. I know the same things you know. That's what I've been saying the whole time.
Cool.
Next week, though, I should definitely finally be able to talk about my G-Sync HDR reviews. So
Ooh.
that's all. I've wrapped that up while I was on 10-hour layover this weekend.
All right.
Nice, cool. Let's wrap it up.
Oh, okay. I think I'm gone too. Wait, where are my notes? See, I can't. Took me a while to remember anything.
Check on your MacBook.
Yeah, check on my MacBook. Yeah, I'll do this. I will do this so people can see the difference. See, I'm going to do this on my Mac. Do this. Every Mac has a secret feature. Check back next week for your fix of PC Talk on the Full Nerd. For audio listeners, subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. Send questions and comments to thefullnerd@PCWorld.com. Also, please leave us a review at iTunes.com. It's the biggest place that people listen to podcasts. And also, every time you do, Apple makes a Mac with a foldable screen. I'm making that up. Obviously, we're gone. Thanks for coming. I'm Gordon Ung with Brad Charkis from
Adios.
Cologne, Germany. Thank you.
Good.
Lena Yee.
Bye, everyone.
And Adam Patrick Murray's going to hit that off switch.
Go fly a B-wing.
Yeah. It only goes left and right.